It's For the People with Judge Herb Dodell.
Okay, Judge.
I can hear you anyway.
Oh, there you go. That's all you need to do. All right. Anyways, can you hear it in the headphones?
I can.
Okay. Well,
it's great. Actually,
the studio is actually functionable.
I was thinking. I was looking at one of the videos, and behind me is this multicolor, whatever looks like the 1960s.
Well, it was my ex.
I said, why am I sitting in front of a 1960s?
Because I had my ex-girlfriend. Because I had my ex-girlfriend do some artwork on it, and that's why you're sitting behind planets and sunsets.
I like stars and moons; they're nice.
Yeah, well, I wish I don't want to get into it. But
when I was a rock and roll lawyer, I used to wear shirts like that.
I know you did. Well, anyways, yeah, it was. Listen, I wanted the walls before looked like crap, so I figured, she was an artist, and I was trying to give her some work, and have her paint the studio, and lo and behold, after she painted it, we broke up. So, what are you gonna do? She left me a memory.
Well, I was thinking, I was listening to a couple of the prior shows, and I had started to make some comments about what was going on with the lawsuits against Trump. My comments were pretty much just off the cuff because I hadn't read anything.
Yeah.
Now I've been inspired by people who are calling me and asking me what I think about some of these things. So I now have read all the complaints. I read them moving papers. They call them moving papers.
Yeah.
I even spoke to one of the lawyers. And I've looked at some of the issues, and now I got a pretty good idea what's going to happen.
Checked out any of the videos or
no video,
or magazines?
I haven't. But Stormy hasn't weathered the storm as well.
Yeah, she's a little. The storm's beat her ass.
Well, I watched the interview, or at least about 85% of it.
I did too.
And it's all very interesting.
I like the part where she said that she spanked Trump with his own magazine. Did you hear that part?
I did.
Yeah.
I had no comment about that.
Well, it's and then she's like, and then they asked her about having sex, and she didn't want to have sex, and she wasn't attracted to Trump, but
thought it was a good business deal.
Well, this is what adult stars do. They have sex with guys they don't want to have sex with. Usually they get paid money for it. This time it was for a TV gig with The Apprentice. I'm sure she thought she was going to get on The Apprentice. I'm sure he threw that carrot at her, and of course he did.
Well, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. There's going to be a lot of factual dispute here.
I don't know.
I'm not so sure he's going to deny that they had an affair. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I'm not sure what he's done about that.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, you see, I guess she just filed a defamation lawsuit against Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, Trump's attorney, because of what he said about her. So it's like this is going back and forth with lawsuits, and they're suing her for $20 million. What? You're a judge. Okay, you've been in this business for a billion years. What the hell do you think is going to happen here? Is there anything going to happen?
I got a pretty good idea.
All right, well, tell us.
Actually, I do.
Tell us. Tell us.
Well, since there are three cases, there are really three different theories. What's amazing about it? I read the first lawsuit, we'll talk about that one first.
Which one's that?
That was Stormy Daniels.
Okay, Stormy Daniels.
Her argument is that there never was an agreement.
Right.
And it's not like rescinding a contract that's in existence already, because they're claiming there was no contract. So if there's no contract and there's no provision for arbitration, there's no provision that an arbitrator, and that person is identified, or at least the entity that person works for is identified in the agreements. It says they're going to use a particular service. They call them alternative dispute resolution services. That means that person, if there's no contract, there is no arbitration provision. And there's nobody to make any kind of rulings about restraining orders. But if there is a contract, if there is, and I'll talk about that in a second, then that arbitrator could, as part of a proceeding, issue an ex parte restraining order. Because I read in the papers that they were all complaining about the fact that she got no notice that they were going in and asking for a restraining order. Well, that's the way it works ordinarily.
Well, let me ask you a question, okay? the bottom line is this. Supposedly, she got paid $130,000. There was a contract, and I guess the lawyer signed it, and she signed it, but Trump never signed it. So does that stop the contract from being valid?
No.
Okay, so that's what they're arguing right now.
That's that seems to be his only argument, because he doesn't have the same facts that exist in the McDougal case.
Right.
Her case is based on a different theory, which we'll talk about that in a minute.
Well,
her case is there's no contract.
Right. That's what. But I'm saying there's no contract because Trump didn't sign the contract.
Well, that doesn't ultimately make any difference. It's, you know, you've asked me the question many times, and many other people have asked me the same one, and that is there a difference between an oral agreement and a written agreement? In this case, an oral agreement probably makes more sense. But put that aside for the moment, you know, tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Literally.
I'm telling you, probably.
Well, the bottom line really is she took the money. That's not in dispute.
Exactly.
And I will say this. I've been practicing for a long time, and I used to draft agreements and things like that. This was a first-class professional job that was done by Mr. Cohen. First class. They figured out all of the nuances. The
angles.
They did a very, very good job. And they set it up in a way that Trump really is not a party to that agreement. You know, it's an agreement between a company and her.
Right.
And that company may very well be owned by people, but it's surely not owned by Trump. So he doesn't really appear on anything. But there's an addendum to the agreement. And the addendum identifies the people by their real names. She's referred to in the agreement as Peggy Peterson.
Right.
And he's referred to as David Dennison, I think, or Donald Dennison.
Donald Duck. Daffy Duck, I think.
Dennison. Show some respect, Mr. Garver. The man is the President of the United States.
Please, not my president, but go ahead.
Well, he's everybody's president.
Well, not mine, but go ahead.
The bottom line is that there are all kinds of rules. This is a contract that was basically fully executed. And it didn't matter whether there was in writing or not. It goes to the proof. And whether or not certain provisions applied or it wasn't part of the agreement, they can prove that contract with oral testimony and use the agreements as memoranda representing the terms and conditions of the agreement that they had between them. So that case rises or falls. I don't mean that. Do I really mean that?
I don't know.
Rises and falls.
Well, so he didn't have to sign the contract. That's the point. That was the main thing.
Well, there are certain contracts that require them to be in writing.
Yeah.
And that's called basically the statute of frauds. It goes back back to England in 1400s or something.
Yeah.
That certain contracts must be in writing. Like a contract to sell real estate has to be in writing. At least more than a year has to be in writing. A promise to answer for the debt or default of another has to be in writing. But this one was basically an agreement between an entity, an LLC,
right,
a Delaware LLC,
right.
And the reason it's a Delaware LLC is Delaware has the loosest regulations against corporations and business entities. That's why for many years, corporations always seem to be incorporated in Delaware. It was like the capital of incorporation.
I love Dewey Beach over there too. A lot of drunk women running around there.
I'm waiting for the shoe to drop on the next question. No, the bottom line is, this case is going to be in. The likelihood is, the case is going to be in federal court.
Okay.
Why in federal court? It was filed in state court.
Yeah.
But there's a procedure that allows a party or parties to remove that case from state court and move it to the federal court.
Well, why do they keep on? Why does this Stormy Daniels' attorney keep on bringing up the California law? If it was filed in Delaware.
No, that's not the determining factor.
Okay, I'm just asking because he
contract was made here. Unless there's a provision in there that's effective that says a certain amount of credence has to be given to a different kind of law. It's called forum shopping.
Okay.
Then you follow the law where the contract was made and all of those kinds of things. We'll talk more about that right after the break. If you have any questions, and many people do, contact me at AskJudge judgeherb@gmail.com.
Herb Dodell is a lawyer and a judge for the people. Having served as a Superior Court judge, presiding over more than 9,000 cases, he has witnessed firsthand how complicated and corrupt the legal system can be. His goal is to show how things really work in the legal system so that people can navigate the legal system in the best way for them. Many people often feel marginalized by the legal system and are uninformed about how to proceed when unfortunate circumstances arise in their life. Judge Herb will pull back the curtain, lift the veil, so people can truly understand their rights, have access to top legal personnel that they can trust, and have knowledge about how things work so they can make better choices. Judge Herb isn't just knowledgeable. His integrity and spiritual values are truly what make him different. He cares about democratizing access and information for all and desires to turn on the light so the people, you, can benefit. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
What you were asking about just before the break is what law would apply. Well, there's something called a choice of law provision that most lawyers will put into an agreement if they want a particular state's law to apply. So if they were going to apply the substantive law of the state of Delaware, they would have said that. I don't remember seeing a choice of law provision in there, but Cohen signed on behalf of an entity.
Right.
Donald Trump appears nowhere except in the addendum, and he doesn't sign that. That's basically saying that Dennison is really him and Peggy Peterson is really her. It says that.
Yeah.
But they pretty much anticipated all of the things that could go wrong, and it was remarkably well done. If you wanted to hide identity, that's how you do it. You pick a name of an entity, and that's what you do.
Now, let me ask what is she? Yeah, because I guess they countersued her for $20 million.
Right.
Is she possibly on the hook for that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Why?
You have to ask yourself, what are they really trying to gain out of this? They're not asking for any money.
Right.
She said she didn't get any money from 60 Minutes. What does she want? She wants the right to speak. And that contract prevents her from speaking, certainly on certain subjects. She wants that to be vacated so she could talk. Why does she want to talk? Obviously, she's trying to make her business better and do whatever she can do to hype it up as much as she can hype it up. But I think personally, what I did was I sat down and I started reading all this, and I said, what would I do if I was the judge deciding this case?
Yeah.
With what I know and with what I read, what would I do?
What would you do?
I think she's got a tough road to go.
Okay.
Really tough road to go.
So
now what happened is they moved it into federal court. And so there's a procedure called a motion to remand. Remand means send it back to the state court. In order to be in federal court, we did touch on this one week, I remember talking about it, that if the parties are from different states, say there's two parties, two different states, and the controversy exceeds $75,000, which this obviously does, you have to be in federal court.
Mm-hmm.
What people do to defeat diversity is they'll name a local third party, and now the third party and the plaintiff are in the same state, so you don't get this diversity. And it has to have federal issues. There's no issues here. This is very simple. This is a one-liner. Was there an agreement or was there not an agreement? If there was an agreement and she went out and violated, having been paid $130,000, the agreement provides for $1 million per event.
Right.
So if she violates it 20 times, that's $20 million.
So she could be on the hook for $20 million.
She could be.
Wow. And if they also have, I guess, in the contract, they had that she can't expose any text messages or videos or CDs or whatever. Lo and behold, her attorney actually shot out a tweet.
Yeah, I saw that.
You see that with a
Yeah.
CD. So I mean, what's the
What's
end
on
game?
the CD? Who knows?
Yeah, but what's the end game here? I mean, what is the end game?
The end game is about pressure. They want to see how far they can push him. He's not pushable. He's going to fight this thing, although it's going to be an annoyance and an embarrassment and some other things.
Right.
But I think at the end of the day, I haven't heard all the evidence, so I couldn't make a decision on that. I wouldn't do that without hearing all the admissible evidence.
Yeah.
There may be some questions about the parole evidence rule, meaning what gets in other than the physical document which exists. And then the argument could be made that he signed it on behalf of Trump as an agent. There will be arguments. The question is, will the federal court send it back to the state court? Are you better off in the federal court if you're the president, or are you better off somewhere else? This kind of case, I think the plaintiff would be better off in a state court.
Yeah. What about Michael
And there's
Cohen?
probably no jury involved here because these are not really. I don't think there's too many issues of fact. I think most of these are all issues of law.
Really, it is. I mean, it's just, did he sign? Is it a viable contract? Is it a legal binding contract, or isn't it?
That's why he offered to give it back the $130,000. Him being Cohen.
Right. Well, now what about Cohen? Now listen, everybody's thinking that he might be guilty of campaign negligence. That you're only supposed to give out $2,500 to a campaign supposedly. He basically gave Stormy Daniels $130,000 out of his own pocket.
Maybe.
Well, he did. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, he gave her the $130,000. Was it a campaign contribution? That's what they're going to try to find out too. Is he on the hook for that because it happened 10 days before the election?
That's a definite maybe.
Okay. There's a lot of definite maybes in this thing.
Well, that's what litigation. That's what litigation is about. You don't know who your judge is going to be. He or she may be a big Trump supporter.
Yeah.
Or maybe somebody who's anti-Trump.
Yeah.
Federal court, you get who you got, and they're lifetime appointments.
Right.
And they could have been appointed by Barack Obama. And they may be looking to get even for things that they think were done badly or adversely to the campaign.
That's not fair, though. That's not supposed to happen.
No, it's not. Oh, no, it's
law.
not supposed to happen.
It's not supposed to happen.
But it does.
Yeah. So all these guys, I mean, Stormy Daniels could be on the hook for $20 million. Michael Cohen could be charged with a felony. I think
the president has got a potential liability too if they could tie them together.
All right. What's his liability?
Well, right now he doesn't know anything. He didn't know money was being paid. He didn't make any agreement. Well, that's what the burden of proof comes back every time.
Right.
Somebody has the burden of proving that it was him.
Yeah.
And there's probably a pretty good factual argument. The guy that's in this thing is the lawyer, her lawyer. It looks kind of shaky when I'm reading all these documents. It starts to sound like maybe he had a little conflict of interest. Maybe.
Yeah.
Could be. He's the same lawyer, by the way, that's on the McDougal case.
Well, that's not her lawyer as of Aviante, I think.
Oh no, he's the trial guy now.
Yeah, it's a new lawyer, but yeah,
he's taking a big chance.
Yeah, he is, man. I mean,
And if he's in federal court, it's called Rule 11. In federal court, if it's shown that the case was filed frivolously or without any real legal basis, the litigant and the lawyer can be responsible for serious sanctions.
Yeah. What about the threat? She's saying that she's been threatened and things like that and harassed. Does that have anything to do with the contract, or is that a completely different separate
issue?
Okay.
Look, the contract, the complaint is for declaratory relief. It's not for rescission. It's for declaratory relief. What they're saying is
release her from
we want to be able to say that there was no contract and therefore she can do and say whatever she wants.
Yeah.
That's her only upside at the moment. That threat argument isn't going anywhere.
Okay.
She's got a guy in a parking lot in Las Vegas who kind of leans around her and says what he supposedly said, and she could recognize him anywhere in the world. Not a great credible story.
Yeah, and then she also signed a couple, I guess, waivers saying that, she never, this year actually, that she never did have an affair with Trump, and it was all a bunch of lies. in this year, 2018, she signed 2 of those.
It was 130,000 reasons why she wrote that. That's what she's going to say. I never did any of it.
She said she was intimidated. That's why she did it. She was intimidated and feared for her safety. That's
and the safety of a child.
And the safety of a child.
Yeah, that's what her argument's going to be, but you got to prove that.
Right.
You know, I've had cases over the years where the police or law enforcement has tape recorded stuff. I remember a drug case I had in San Jose where they had the whole transaction on a tape in the front of a car. The narcotics guy was talking to the defendant. The whole deal went right down, right in the car. And it was all recorded. Where do you go with a case like that if you're the defendant? You know where you go with a case like that?
To jail.
But I remember he was in custody. I remember that.
Yeah.
That he came in wearing a nice suit and everything because they give you clothes and to change into.
Of course, look at OJ.
But anyways. But the argument you make is an entrapment argument. I never would have done this. I'm a good boy. I would never have done this, but they talked me into it. And none of that is on tape when they said to me, what you did, it's a defense argument that rarely works.
Right.
Rarely works.
Right. Right.
You'd have to have something serious to substantiate your case.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think is going to, when it all, with this, and we got the other cases to talk about, the Karen McDougal or whatever her name is. What do you think is going to happen with this whole thing with Stormy Daniels and the contract and her being sued by Trump and then her defamation lawsuit against Cohen?
I don't know about any defamation lawsuit.
It just got filed today. She just filed it like about 2 hours ago or whatever.
That's the second case. That's Zervas, Summer Zervas, represented by Gloria Allred.
Right.
Big difference in that case.
Well, what about this one? What do you think is going to happen? We can get into that. We got another
personal opinion.
What do you think is going to happen with this Trump and Stormy Daniels thing? Yeah, personal opinion as a judge.
I think that the burden of proof will carry the day. I think they have enough evidence to support that there was an agreement. Rarely do you get somebody getting paid that kind of money and saying what they're doing and all of that and be able to set aside a contract like it's not a contract.
Right.
Rescission is different.
Yeah.
So when we get into the third case, which is Karen McDougal's case, that's different. They're not saying there was no contract. They're saying that there was, but it was induced fraudulently.
Right.
With the promises that they were going to give her so many advertising features on the front of magazines and whatever.
Do her life story.
And they didn't do it.
Yeah, do any of it. They buried it.
If you have that kind of failure of consideration or fraudulent representations or anyone that fits into a basis for a rescission, contract is over. Not that it never existed. It's over. And as long as each party gives back to the other the consideration for the original agreement.
Yeah.
That's unlikely to ever happen in that case either.
So Stormy Daniels is pretty screwed, right?
I wouldn't bet the family farm on it.
She's out on the limb here.
Well, she's out to make some money on it.
But I'm saying she's out on the limb. I mean, they're going to try to sue her for $20 million. I mean, do they have a good case there, or do you think is that a wash too?
Well, if the contract is valid,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And she breached it,
which she did.
The question is, what damages did she cause? But the parties were smart enough, or at least Cohen was, to put in what's called a liquidated damage clause. That's what it's called.
Okay.
It means that you can't figure what damages are because they're speculative and whatever it is. So the parties agree that this is a reasonable amount of damages in the event of a breach. And that's exactly what happened.
$1 million.
$1 million per breach.
Oh, man.
Per breach.
Wow. This is crazy, man.
Yeah, but she's not going to have any money either at the end of the day, assuming that they do win, and even assuming that they get some things that are not dischargeable in the bankruptcy court. And whether or not her liability for a breach of contract is dischargeable or not,
why would she
remains to be seen. Why is she doing it?
I mean,
I don't know how old she is. I don't know how old she is now, but she's
39.
She's out there to get as much money out of this as she can and recognition. So we'll talk more about the other two cases right after the break. You got any questions? Contact me at AskJudgeHerbDodell@gmail.com.
It's actually Ask Judge Herb.
That's right.
Gmail.com.
Well, I can't get this straight.
AskJudgeHerb@gmail.com. For the people with Judge Herb Dodell. We'll be back after this.
Talk Radio, 1050 AM, KCAA.
In his book, From the Trench to the Bench, Judge Herb Dodell demystifies the legal system, including both civil and criminal, the lawyers, the judges, and the process. As a judge, former deputy district attorney, and criminal defense attorney, he knows the legal system. He has the inside information that you need to pick a lawyer, and he's here to give it to you. No matter what you're facing that makes you think you may need a lawyer, Judge Herb will shed valuable light on your situation and reveal your best options and many secrets of how the judicial system actually works. To find out more about how the legal system really works, you can get your copy of Judge Herb Dodell's eye-opening book, From the Trench to the Bench, at Amazon.com.
Okay, so let's get back to case number 2, which is Summer Zervos. Her case is very different than the other two.
Okay.
Because she had no agreement of any kind.
Yeah.
Her lawsuit, which is in state court in New York, is strictly for defamation. Because whatever happened, assuming that he aggressively approached her or assaulted, whatever it is that she's claiming it happened.
Sexually assaulted her.
Assuming that. The statute's gone. So they can't do much about that. So the only case that they have is a defamation case. And the defamation case is based on the fact that he, President Trump, he said that she was a liar and none of this had ever happened. So that's going to be a he said, she said case. Who do you believe under those circumstances? Credibility is going to be very important there. Now, the most significant fact is there's something called discovery.
Yes.
Discovery is the killer here because they have a right, each one of the litigants. And by the way, there was an attempt made by Trump to dismiss her state court action in New York. It was denied. One of the grounds was that he was immune from prosecution because he's a sitting president. And I read the judge's opinion. She was very good. She was right on the money. She said, the case of Jones versus Clinton.
Paula Jones?
Paula Jones.
Oh, my God.
That's the key case in terms of applying the rules.
Wow.
And in that case, the court held that even though he's a sitting president, the conduct that was complained of had nothing to do with running the country. This was an outside affair, literally. And so they allowed that to proceed. Now, what happens in discovery is, I call it the Christopher Columbus part of every case. It's out there digging and finding and discovering and doing all what you need to do to make your case better. And they will be doing that. They will be taking his deposition. The chances are there'll be no way that they can prevent that from happening.
So Trump's going to have to take a deposition on
He will.
this, for sure.
He's a very sophisticated litigant. But he may just not tell the truth.
Well.
And you asked me last week about perjury.
Yeah.
In all the years that I practiced, even the ones when I was a DA, nobody ever gets prosecuted for perjury testifying in a civil case. I never saw it happen.
Really?
It could, and because of the nature of this case and who's involved, maybe, because if he's convicted of he's not convicted, it's a civil case.
Right.
If there's a liability and the perjury then transmits the case from civil to criminal.
Could that be a part of the Robert Mueller investigation where if he does perjure himself there? I mean,
they're not related.
But I'm just saying. But I mean, could Congress do something in the impeachment proceedings because he perjured himself on this one?
If he's found liable, or in a criminal case, if he's convicted of perjury, that's an impeachable offense.
Well, I mean, civilly though. This is a civil case.
But it can turn into a criminal case if there's a perjury.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
That's the risk that he has.
Okay.
Not that I see anybody doing it, but it's possible.
Right.
It's certainly one of the remedies that's available. But she's got a one-on-one, and where are her damages?
Well,
I'm not so sure she can prove any real damages.
Yeah.
She's looking to make a name for herself.
Of course.
Also.
They all are.
They are. And I think her case depends on what kind of jury, because that's a jury issue. See, that's not an issue of law necessarily, although the burden of proof is on the plaintiff. And the defense to a defamation case, which I think I talked about last week, defense to a defamation case is that it was true.
Right.
So in other words, if he said, I don't know her and I never knew her, and it's true, that's a defense to a defamation case. And I did mention Sullivan versus the New York Times because that's a key case on commenting about people in public office. They don't have the same kind of protection that the average citizen has. When they occupy a political office, criticisms and comments and things like that are more acceptable than in other circumstances.
Yeah.
Swearing contest, does the jury like him, her, whatever it is? Crapshoot. Discovery, going to be monumental. They will be hiding stuff. And
I wonder what she's got. Do you think she has text messages or audio or video or something like that?
I doubt it.
Okay.
I doubt it. I don't think much of that case either.
Yeah, right?
That's just a personal opinion. I see a lot of people commenting about things from a political standpoint, whatever. What I'm doing is I'm commenting as a trial lawyer and as a judge.
That's what I'm asking.
And I see it as if I was a disinterested person, which I would be.
You see it as a judge.
I would see it. Yeah, I think. Well, I think she has the right to go to trial.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a summary judgment motion in this case, meaning it can be decided by the court without a trial.
Yeah.
Issues of fact, of material fact, make this a triable case. In New York.
Right.
He's from New York.
Right.
What was she doing? I don't remember. I think she was looking for a job on The Apprentice.
Yeah, it was The Apprentice. Yeah, she was part of The Apprentice. Thing.
Well, they're going to have witnesses. They're going to say they never saw him do anything.
Right.
Whatever it's going to be. And she's going to say, yeah, he tried to kiss me in the bathroom, or whatever her story is.
He said, she said.
Absolutely. He said, she said. What does that lead to, Gary? Remember we were talking about the hypothetical case a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
What happens in a hypothetical case where you don't know at the end of the day who's telling the truth?
Gets dismissed.
Party with the burden of proof loses.
Right. Well, I'm saying.
So if you say at the end of the day, and I'm not so sure there'd be a jury trial or not, I would imagine that they will have one because that's what the plaintiff wants. He doesn't want some dry person sitting up there saying, well, as a matter of law, you can't make it. It's about the burden of proof.
Yeah.
I don't think she's got much to go on, personally.
Right.
I don't know enough in terms of the facts to say that I'm making a definitive, I don't want to say ruling because it's not a ruling. I don't want to say anything definitive because I don't know enough.
Yeah, you don't know the discovery.
I haven't seen any discovery.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
but I read the complaint.
Right.
And I read the opinion, and I think the judge's ruling that it goes forward to trial was right. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I don't even think they'll appeal that.
Poor Melania. I feel so bad for her. I really do.
My wife says the same thing all the time. Everybody kind of ignores her, you know.
Yeah, this is terrible.
But I don't make political comments. I'm not interested in the politics.
I'm just saying. I just feel bad
I'm not
for
interested in the politics. I'm interested in the legal issues. So now we get to McDougal.
Yeah, Karen McDougal, the Playboy Playmate, the hottest one out of the bunch.
I knew you were going to say that.
She is.
She is very pretty.
She's beautiful.
She's very, very pretty.
Yeah.
And her story, I read her complaint too.
Yeah.
Her story is a little different because she didn't have a contract with Trump or any company in which Trump is involved. She had a contract with some publisher.
Right.
And that contract allowed, even though the print was really small, said they don't have to, it's like called a pay or play. If you're a film person and you make a deal and you're an actor, they have what's called pay or play provisions. So if you don't want to use it, all you have to do is pay for it.
Right, and you bury it.
And you bury it. They call it that. I think they catch and kill or something like that. And that's probably what's happening here. But you still have to get back to the initial question of whether or not there were promises made that don't appear in that agreement, by the way, because I read that one too. That's a real stretch, whether they promised her all these things. But it's with it's with the Daily Inquirer.
Yeah, National Enquirer.
National Enquirer.
Yeah, that,
I think it used to be called the Daily Inquirer. Whatever it's called.
Mag, yeah.
Whatever it is, you can make an agreement with somebody that you can buy whatever they have, but you're not obligated to use it. And that's what they did.
So they bought her off.
They bought her, absolutely. Well,
they did
sure.
because I guess the owner of the National Enquirer is a big friend of Trump's. And,
David Pecker.
Pecker, of course. But anyway,
it fits into the scenario.
Exactly, it fits into this whole
I
scenario.
I have to say that because it's
It is. It's the truth. But yeah, I guess
they definitely were trying to keep it quiet.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that she can do saying, hey, this guy was a friend of Trump. He promised me he was going to tell my story, do articles on me or whatever, feature me, and he buried it. And so
I want my rights back.
Yeah. So
I want to rescind the agreement that I have with them because they failed to produce what they were supposed to produce. I want my contract back, and I want my rights back, and I want free speech.
Right.
And I want all of that. She's not asking for any money either.
No, she's not. She just wants.
But she's going to have to give back the money. A rescission, you do have to give back the money.
Right.
So she would be in a position of getting basically the right to say what she wants to say. Isn't it all pretty much said by now?
I mean, she wants her life story. I guess they said they'd write do something on her life or whatever. She wants to tell her life story again. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know, Judge. I tell you, man, it's why didn't they do this before the election? Why didn't all these women come out before the election?
Well, a number of people did.
I know, but I'm saying why didn't these specific women come out before the election, like the Stormy Daniels case? I mean, if this stuff was Stormy Daniels and then Karen McDougal, if all these three and this other girl, if they all came out before the election, maybe we'd have a different result.
Maybe. I'm not so sure you would.
Probably not. I don't know.
Because it comes down to it. I've heard a number of the commentators say it, and I agree.
Yeah.
That he could pretty much do whatever he wants to do. They may not like it.
Yeah.
They may not appreciate it, but they're in it for the message, and he's delivering their message, and they may not abandon him if they think he's the worst guy.
Yeah. Well,
they almost don't care what he is.
They don't, because I mean that tape came out, the Access Hollywood.
Yeah, that didn't hurt him.
That didn't hurt him at all. It
no.
didn't, in fact, I just read today before the show that his approval ratings have actually gone up. You believe that? I don't know, man. It's just he's like Teflon Don here. I mean, nothing can touch him. He is.
I'm not so sure about that.
Well, we'll see. So, what do you think is going to happen when
that one is an issue of rescission? Yeah, and hers is a little bit different too because her scenario covers a 10-month period. Stormy Daniels was a one-nighter.
Right.
Big difference.
Totally.
Having an affair over a long period of time is a whole lot different than a one-nighter.
Right.
And that's also a difference.
Yeah.
And you could understand if you're selling, because that's what lawyers do, we sell.
Right.
You could understand that she would have done 10 months because she saw an opportunity to enhance her career.
Well, she thought she was in love with him. Supposedly that's what she said, and he was in love with her. So that's what she said. Who knows?
Well, you're never going to hear it from him.
Hell no. Of course not.
And there's really no legal basis for him to refuse to testify, unless
they can hold on. He has to be. They can dispose him on that case too.
Depose him, sure.
Really?
Separate case.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They haven't removed that one from state court to federal court that I've seen so far. I did see the removal papers that were filed by Cohen.
Yeah.
And Trump joined in that lawsuit, which is kind of an interesting point. If it never happened,
why would he join?
Why in the lawsuit?
Yeah, that's the point.
But Cohen is a very good lawyer. He knows how to set up these things. They refer to him as the fixer.
Yeah.
If I was to be a fixer, I probably would have done it the same way he did.
Yeah, but he did it 10 days. The thing is, and this is where the legal ramifications, criminal ramifications could come into play.
Could be.
He did it 10 days before the election, $130,000.
I think it's a stretch.
Well,
we'll talk about it after we stretch.
All right. Yeah, we need to stretch.
This is the seventh inning stretch right now.
All right. For the people, check out Judge Herb's book, From the Trench to the Bench. You can get it at Amazon.com, and you can ask any question to Judge. Go to or email him, askjudgeherb@gmail.com. We'll be right back with Judge Herb Dodell for the people.
NBC Talk Radio, 1050 AM, KCAA.
Did you ever meet a lawyer that was for the people? Someone who had the best interests of the people at heart? Herb Dodell has been a lawyer for more than 50 years and has been a Superior Court judge for 9 years, having presided over more than 9,000 cases. In this show, he will reveal the secrets of how things really work in the legal system, so you can maximize your position and benefit most when you're in trouble and need someone on your side to simplify the process for you. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
Okay, we're back. I've said before, I've listened to all the shows, and I've repeated it every now and again. Litigation is one thing that's certain about litigation. What do you think that is?
Somebody's going to win and lose.
The answer is that litigation is uncertain.
Okay.
You don't know where you're going to go, because if you want to ask what your judge is going to be like, let's assume that on Stormy Daniels you're in federal court. There's a fairly good chance that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
And you're going to get somebody who's a lifer. Literally a lifer. You know what kind of rulings he or she is going to make? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
You could guess.
Right.
There have been many, many times over the years that I've submitted a brief and said, this is gold. Fabulous. How could it go any other way? And then it gets denied. And you say, how could that possibly be?
Yeah.
Same thing on the other side. So I really haven't got much of a defense, because I did defense work also. You throw it against the wall and you hope something will stick. And somebody says, I'm going to grab onto that, but you don't know what that judge is going to do. Forget about the judge only. How about the jury?
Yeah.
This is a little different than most cases, because normally you have two people, nobody knows them, nobody cares about them. I've had jurors say, I just wanted to get out of here, it was too hot, or whatever it is. But this one, very few people are going to say they don't know who the president is. Although it's the old Johnny Carson show, I think he used to ask people in the street who the vice president was, people didn't know.
I used to do that. The porn stars. They didn't know.
You probably have a very colorful life.
I did.
Yeah, well, but the bottom line is that you also don't know what's going to happen with the discovery.
Right.
I think I told the story to kind of illustrate that there's some lawyers are very honest, legitimate.
Yeah.
And I had a case that it was an arson case actually, and or an insurance fraud case, and I went back to Philadelphia to take the deposition of the claims manager. The lawyer on the other side was a very honorable, professional guy.
Yeah.
Real solid citizen type person. And I had the box, a banker's box full of documents that I schlepped with me on the plane to Philadelphia. And I'm sitting in a hotel room. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going through the documents, I'm making notes and highlighting and underlining and doing all that. And I come across a document, a game breaker. It was in the box that they produced. And I looked at that, and I said to myself, this is over. This is an acknowledgement by a high-up person that certain facts were as we claimed they were, which they had been denying. So I said to Kelly, who was the other lawyer, after the deposition when I put it in front of him, and he had to acknowledge that it was real. It's called authentication. I said, you're not going anywhere with this one. He says, you're right. So 2 weeks later, we settled it. The fact of the matter is, you don't know what's going to show up here.
Right.
You don't know who's going to change their view or their recollection or whatever. But you can be sure one thing, that the president and Mr. Cohen are wedded to the hip.
Yes.
And there's no way you're going to get one to turn on the other.
No way.
It ain't going to happen.
No way.
And this apparently, one could argue that this was the custom and practice, that this was the things that they did customarily, that these are not the only 2 people or 3 people or 5 people, whatever it is. And in some cases, under the evidence code, depending on where you're trying the case, it can come in. The argument is it shouldn't because it's so prejudicial.
Let me ask you something. What if Trump knew, he's been denying that he knew anything about it. Michael Cohen's denied that Trump knew anything about it. How if somebody...
That's going to stay.
What do you mean that's
never going to change.
Well, I know that, but how about they find out that he did know about it?
How are they going to find out?
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying, how if they do? Maybe somebody,
Maybe some of the FBI made notes.
Maybe there's, that's
knows?
what I'm saying. You don't know. That's what I'm saying. CIA, FBI, who knows? I'm just saying, what if that happens? Is there any?
Well, you can't destroy evidence.
Yeah.
And that's
so
a crime.
He could be on the hook for that.
He could be on the hook for the campaign thing too, although I think that's a stretch. If I was sitting on that issue, I wouldn't find it to be so.
Why? I mean, it was 10 days before the election. It was 130 grand. It was basically to buy her silence.
Okay.
So, I mean, he did it.
He made a contract, maybe.
Yeah, but he's Trump's lawyer. He's Trump's personal lawyer doing this.
So what?
Well, I mean, it's $130,000. It's hush money.
If it turns out that Trump did not know, and Cohen really did take the money out of his HELOC loan, and he really did it because he was his lawyer and his friend. But it's a story.
Okay.
And if that story is bought by anybody,
right?
And I think it's a stretch personally. It's hard to find lawyers who will come out of their pocket for 130 grand with no expectation.
Would you?
Well, you got to talk to your client.
That's what I'm saying.
If you're spending money for your client, you got to tell the client what you're spending it for.
Thank you. So what would happen if it comes out? I mean, if they say, hey, you know what, we feel that Trump did know.
Who's going to decide that? A juror.
A juror or a judge going to decide that? Don't you?
That's probably a factual issue for a jury.
Really?
Yeah, credibility and.
So there could be a jury trial on this?
Oh yeah. Well, I shouldn't say, oh yeah, so quick.
Yeah.
It's basically to declare that a contract does not exist. That's an issue of law. But you still have to, as part of the lawsuit, you still have to make factual findings. You still have to go out and figure out to support your position why you're claiming it shouldn't be or why you're claiming it should be.
But the thing is this, okay, you're basically saying that the contract is valid and she has no shot at getting it rescinded. What I'm asking is if they find out that Trump did know about it, because Trump had to know about it. Your lawyer's not going to pay somebody $130,000 just willy-nilly without being consulted.
It's not in the ordinary scheme of
Okay,
things.
what would happen if they that's what I'm saying, the legal ramifications. That's what I'm really getting down to with Trump and Cohen. They colluded with this thing. If Trump colluded and said, hey, pay her off in this fake LLC, give her the 130 grand and deny that I knew anything about it. And they find, to the contrary, they find evidence that he did know about it.
The jury.
The jury or the judge or whoever.
Well,
the prosecutor.
if the jury.
Well, the prosecutor.
It's not a criminal case.
Okay, it's a civil case.
If a juror decides.
There's no criminality involved in this at all.
Besides, just so you know, there's a different jury in the federal court than in the state court.
Right.
And you don't get to voir dire jurors in federal court.
But the campaign, if
they find that, he's in trouble.
Okay, he's in criminal trouble.
He is in trouble.
Okay,
but there's a long way to go from making an allegation and proving it.
Right.
That's why the burden of proof exists. I've said this at least 10 times in the shows because I apply it every day.
I understand.
The fact of the matter is, if at the end of the day they haven't met the burden, in this case it would be a civil burden, by a preponderance of the evidence, then the party with the burden loses. That's just simple.
Yeah.
And in the defense of a defamation case, the affirmative defense is it's truthful. You got to prove it's truthful. That burden of proof is the moving factor in most cases, and since you don't know what the finder of fact is going to determine, that's what the gamble is. So these three cases are all very different. One says there's no contract. One says there is one, but I want to revise it or rescind it. And the third one is just an event with no contract, no agreement. Nobody said anything to anybody. Nobody paid anything. Nothing. Just a he said, she said.
Yeah.
So those are the three cases. You may see more. No. You know, there's a tendency. There's a tendency for people to pile on.
Well, look at what they did with Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby. I mean, those
Cosby was really different.
Well, I'm just saying, but I'm saying the pile on.
Yes, they do.
I remember.
Oh, absolutely.
1, 2, and then it turned into 30, 40. Weinstein, the same thing. It's weird. I mean, with Trump, we already knew that he was doing this stuff before the election. I'm just curious about what the legal ramifications are.
He has some exposure.
Trump does.
Yeah, some. I don't think much.
Criminal or just civil?
I think it might be both. It's a stretch on the criminal because of the campaign rules.
Yeah.
And I don't know how strict they're going to enforce that, or whether or not you have to leap over too many hurdles to get to the conclusion that this was a violation of the election laws. Maybe yes, maybe no. I think he's probably okay with that.
Judge,
I know you don't agree with me.
I know. I said no. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're the judge.
If you say I don't know, what happens?
It usually means that I don't
Party
know.
with the burden of proof. Party with the burden of proof loses.
Yeah. Well,
that's just the way the system operates.
And maybe there could be a smoking gun too. You don't know.
It depends on who turns.
Yeah.
You may get somebody to turn. Somewhere down the road, somebody is going to flip to make a deal for themselves, or because they're going to get their 15 minutes, or they're going to get to write their book, or whatever, because he's got a lot of enemies out there.
Yes.
Who are looking to do him some damage.
Right.
It's right or wrong. That's what the world turns on.
Yeah.
And that may very well be. The more people that get fired, the more people who have motivations, and who knows what's going to come up. Then you have to decide, who do you believe?
Somebody had to know. I mean, somebody had to know besides Michael Cohen that they were going to pay out Stormy Daniels $130,000. I mean, somebody.
Why?
I just feel this. I just feel
you can feel it all you want.
Because it's too big of a deal to not have somebody else know about it. There has to be some other players involved here. Maybe
you'll find out in discovery.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure in the federal case, the current Stormy Daniels case, whether you're ever going to get there.
Yeah. So I
think he may just decide, he or she, who are the judges, may just decide that the contract is valid.
And that's it.
And that's the end of the day.
That's it.
Now they got a cross complaint.
Then they're going to countersuit her for $20 million.
It doesn't matter.
I'm just saying $20 million.
They could win on the counterclaim.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
Simple.
She could be out like $20 million, and the lawyer too. What a risk, man. Why would you take the risk like this? Just for fame?
Because because the lawyer is now well known.
Yeah, you're right.
People who have cases are going to say, that guy was really good. He showed the thing with the CD on the pillow and the whole thing, whatever it was on.
He might have just sacrificed Stormy Daniels for his own fame.
Well, then you get into serious ethical issues.
Okay, I'm just saying it'll seem like that to me.
Beside which, there's nothing he can say that deals with communications between him and her. It's all privileged by the attorney-client privilege.
Right.
So then nobody's going to find out about the same thing with Cohen.
Yeah.
They're going to talk to him. He's going to say whatever he's going to say. Well, maybe not. Maybe he's not the attorney on this particular matter. He could be his attorney on something else.
Yeah.
But if it deals with this, there may be some exposure. We're in for a great ride. I'm looking forward to it. I find it fascinating.
You must.
As a member of this system.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating. It's going to play a lot of very, very interesting nuances.
Well, we could talk about this every week.
Yeah, well, not every week.
Well, I'm saying we could.
Next week we might even talk about domestic violence.
Oh, great. Okay.
Just a little something, a little heads up.
Some happiness.
Well, the law business is not happiness.
It isn't. It's but it is what we need to do to be civil, right?
But the truth ultimately works out,
Amen.
Even if not in a physical world, it does work out in a spiritual world, and you end up paying the price for doing what you're doing.
Happy Passover, Judge.
Oh.
And Easter.
Thanks.
All right.
One for each of you.
Of course, I'm half and half.
That's why you get half. You get one for each shot.
I'll make you some pastel. All right. I'll see you later. All right.
Okay, next week.
All right. Hey, if you want to ask Judge any questions, go to email him, askjudgeherb@gmail.com, and check out his book, From the Trench to the Bench, on Amazon and YouTube videos. Judge Herb Dodell. Check him out on YouTube.
You can actually go into the website too, which is Judge Herb Dodell judgeherbdodell.us.
Okay, I think we're off. We're out.
Okay.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM. 511
online and learn how quickly you can create, produce, and host your very own talk show.